Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our Church Champions event. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today. I'm Alex, and I lead the charity Faith in Later Life, where we inspire and equip churches to reach older people with the gospel, to disciple older believers as followers of Jesus, and to mobilize them in God's lifelong disciple making mission. Today, we're going to spend the next hour or so, or less, hopefully, actually, thinking about practical safeguarding among older people. Do please note that this in no way replaces your safeguarding training, which we urge you to undertake through your church, through your denomination, or through the charity that you are ministering for. What we hope instead is that this would be a real opportunity for us to dig into how we can practically do the things that our policies require us to do in our work among older people. I'm so delighted, therefore, to welcome our speaker today, Dean Else. He's going to share with us a little bit about his background and what he knows about safeguarding, to remind us of some of the things we may already know, but also to help us dig that bit deeper into how we can practically support older people as we safeguard them. Dean's going to share with us for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to have an opportunity for some questions and answers. And it would be really good to hear from some of you who are doing grassroots seniors ministry about some of the good ways forward that you've discovered over the years when it comes to doing your safeguarding in a practical way in your groups and ministries. Please do add any questions that you might have throughout the session into the chat, and we will come to those a little later on. Dean, I'm so delighted to welcome you here to this session today. Over to you for the next half hour or so.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me start off by apologising. Unfortunately, I'm all full of flu today, so if I start coughing, hopefully it won't be too long a coughing session, and it won't detract from the amazing ability to share so much with so many wonderful people that are actually out there doing the really important things of actually championing and delivering suitable interaction for everyone of all generations, which sometimes isn't acknowledged as much as I think it should be. And I think the work you do is vitally important, far, far, far more important than anything I do, because if you all interact with one person, then you're automatically interacting with 50 times more people than I will be. So thank you so much for everything you do. I see Andrew said man flu is a serious condition. It is indeed. So I come at this with, I like to think, a modicum of understanding around safeguarding. I have got just shy of 3 decades worth of safeguarding experience in United Kingdom policing across the country, social services, education, and also working with the United Nations and the Human Rights Commission internationally around elevating safeguarding provisions for everyone. And I'm so pleased and blessed to be able to speak to you today because all too often, older people tend to get forgotten when we mention safeguarding. When you say safeguarding to a large swathe of people, the first thing they think of is children and forget the fact that we can all be vulnerable at one point in time or another. And that is what safeguarding is all about. It's about caring and loving and helping somebody in their time of need. And I'm certain that Winston Churchill was a far better orator than I will ever be. And Winston Churchill said that diversity and vulnerability is something that will touch and embrace all of us. So we should support and seek to actively engage with everyone in their time of need, which I think is a lovely sentiment, because I'm certain that if we did that in a sensitive, caring way, the world would be a far much better place. Um, Probably the best way of starting this is if I go through a PowerPoint that I've got with you. Good afternoon. Today we're going to be looking at safeguarding specifically in relation to older people, what it means within a church setting, how concerns can arise, and what each of us can do to help the older members of our communities remain safe, and I think most importantly, show them respect and support them in their time of need. I will start off with a trigger warning. Obviously, we're going to be talking about some concepts to do with abuse and neglect, and that may well touch some of you either through direct interaction with individuals or lived experience. If you need to step out and take time for yourself, please feel free to do so. As Alex has already said, this will be recorded, and so you can come back to it at a time when it suits you and when you've actually managed to get the right support around yourself. So, this session today aims at understanding really what safeguarding means for older people, recognizing harm and risk that can actually exist because it takes a multitude of different faces, um, and see how faith communities can respond more effectively. And hopefully, we can hear some amazing stories from the people we've got in the group here, because I'm certain that your collective experience is far in excess of everything that I've already said. So it's about that opportunity to share good practice and really acknowledge the amazing work you're doing. So, in short, the session will be looking at three things. As I've already said, safeguarding older people and what that actually means rather than just giving it a little label and a badge. Um, how we recognize when something may not quite be right, because I like to say it's if it's not right, then your gut feeling's giving you a direction there. And then look at how we can respond, because that's really what it comes down to, what we're going to do about it, rather than just saying, yes, it's broken. We want to try and help fix it. So, safeguarding is about protecting people's rights to live safely, whilst also supporting their independence. And that's really important. And it's also important that we provide them an opportunity of dignity and well-being rather than taking decisions away from them and treating them like they're a secondary thought. It's about what's best for them, what they need and what they want. It's not about restricting people unnecessarily or making decisions in a unilateral way without considering how it's going to impact on them. It's about ensuring safety alongside respect and, most importantly, empowerment for that individual. If safeguarding is applied in an incorrect way and we take away that empowerment, all we're doing is creating a secondary problem for that individual and we're actually belittling their independence. So now we start getting down to things. Some older people may be at increased risk because of illness, disability, memory problems, bereavement, although that can touch all of us at any time in our life. Isolation is a big growing problem. And dependency on others tends to follow through on that, whether it be for care, either through family, friends, or statutory providers, or even through things like transport, because it automatically creates a power dynamic, which means that somebody is beholden to somebody else potentially. And these factors can increase vulnerability, but should never, ever reduce a person's dignity or allow their voice to be heard and vocalized. And I see you all as champions, as an integral part of that, that you can help ensure that that person's voice is heard at the time when it needs to be. So, safeguarding does matter a lot across the whole of the sphere and the whole of the landscape, but it matters even more in churches. And church communities are a place of trust. where we provide welcoming and pastoral support. And because of this, people may share sensitive information to us, and they may also rely heavily on church or relationships that they build around the churches because they see us as part of their integral faith family, which means safeguarding awareness is especially important for around the church environment and the faith environment. Because if we're not going to protect those who we call our family, then we're not really providing them with the dignity that they deserve. Now, when you think about safeguarding factors, they tend to fall into various different things. And most of the time, people only really tend to think about physical abuse or physical problems around safeguarding. And they sometimes forget that abuse can take many forms. Often, the most common form of concern that affects older people, believe it or not, is financial exploitation, closely followed by neglect, either self-neglect or neglect by a caregiver, coercion and control around that individual, and emotional pressure rather than simply concentrating on the physical harm that somebody may suffer. And I'm certain that you've all come across it, but this is just solely to ensure that we can have that unified understanding and look at the different options that may be available. As I've already said, one of the most common areas of safeguarding concerns and abuse for older people is financial abuse. It's one of the most common risks that affect older people. It inherently involves scams, coercion and control across the board around either giving donations, misusing a bank card when a caregiver takes it to go and purchase something, but then actually withdraws additional money or funds. Or it can also include pressure from other people to actually pay for things or share money with them. It's a hugely growing area of concern, and it's only compounded even more with the financial crisis that's rippling across the whole of the country. And sometimes it starts off quite innocently and then just grows accidentally until it becomes a significant problem. And so we need to be attuned and alive to that from the very beginning and see it at its smallest stages. One of the analogies I like to use around safeguarding is like tending and caring for a garden. If we deal with problems when there's small little weeds that are poking up in the springtime and we pull them out and we keep our garden a safe, caring, beautiful environment, we don't have the big problems to deal with. But if we don't deal with them when they're small incidental matters, before we know it, they're 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot high brambles. And the bramble problems are the ones that are going to cause you immense pain. They're going to let blood. They're going to be really problematic to deal with because the roots are so embedded. So it's about having that real firm belief and that conviction that you can deal with something at the earliest stages and you will be supported and that people will understand why you're doing it. And that's why an event like today is an incredible opportunity to be able to elevate that understanding. So you've got to be able to pick up on the signs of when something's happening. None of us is perfect, but every single one of you will get that gut feeling at one point in time or another, and it just feels like something isn't right. You do not need to know what isn't right and be able to give it a name and a badge and a brand. So long as you know it's not right, you can share that with somebody else. And signs around financial abuse tend to fall into some of the categories on there. And they tend to be often identified by small changes in the behavior of the individual or the mood of the individual. And remember, they can go in one of two directions. They can appear like they're really happy because somebody is now new in their life and helping support them and everything else. But if that's a toxic relationship where somebody is actually financially abusing or controlling someone, then that's not a good relationship. So don't just automatically assume that things are going to be a negative interaction or a downward mood appearance. Circumstances can change. Either you start seeing somebody more because they're seeking to withdraw themselves from that isolation or that abuse or neglect, or you can see them less for the exact opposite reasons. So no one sign or signal proves that abuse exists, but patterns of behavior are where it really comes into key here. And that's where you all have this immense strength. It's like doing a jigsaw. You can, if you're really lucky, have one piece of the jigsaw that shows you what the whole picture is. But that's not the way life normally is. Normally, it tends to be small, little pieces of the jigsaw. And the more we place that together and the more we share that information, either with our safeguarding partners and professionals or with other concerned members of our family, then it allows us to form that bigger picture and actually see what's happening and be able to place the person at the center of that identification. Because that's the key thing about placing the person at the center of everything we do. Safeguarding is inherently about people. It isn't about systems and processes. The systems and processes support us and act as aid memoirs to direct us into what we should do. But the people are the key here. And quite often, people may not speak up, either victims of abuse or neglect, or those that see it. And that tends to come into one of these four different headings. Many people who experience harm don't disclose it. They fear the consequences. They feel embarrassed, especially where it tends to be older people, because they're seen as the adults in the situation. They feel that they've let themselves down and that they feel stupid around that. They're not stupid. Somebody else is manipulating and controlling that situation and that dynamic, and we need to reassure them around that side of things. But they often don't want to cause problems and they want to not be seen to be a burden or a trouble. This is why noticing and gently responding to concerns is so important, that we don't need them to speak up and vocalize their problem. We pick up on those signs and seek to reassure them and support them and make them understand that it is not acceptable and we want to help them. The six overarching safeguarding principles that I like to bring this all back to, and the most important one, as I've already said, is empowerment. But the six safeguarding principles guide all adult safeguarding work, ensuring that our responses are both balanced, respectful in every way, and that's the key thing here, and focused on the well-being and the needs of the individual. And if we don't overlap all of those six areas, then we're automatically going to have failings in the support we give to someone, the identification process that we have around seeing that a problem actually exists, or having a suitable response to that and actually placing the person in a better position. So how are we going to do it? It's a simple little thing. If I was more intellectual or clever in some way, I'm certain I'd come up with a pretty little mnemonic or a phrase around it. But I like keeping things simple because simple works. In a church safeguarding setting, it's everybody's responsibility to notice what is happening. The role of most people is not to investigate, it's to listen, to notice the concerns, to show care in the response that you give to someone, and then to record and document what you've seen and what you've heard. That doesn't mean to say you interpret it, record it, and detail it accurately, because that is really a key factor when it comes down to the provisions that follow on from this side of things. And that tends to be where things falter or get delayed. But then, as Alex has already said, reporting is key. It's sharing your concerns that you've actually formulated, even if it seems like, I don't know why, it just doesn't seem right. Share that with others so that we can actually have action happen. And we'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a few minutes' time. Because it's about responding, as I've already said, but that can be really difficult because I come at this with lots and lots of experience, and it's very easy and keen for me to be able to say, yes, just respond and deal with it. But I know that all of you aren't going to feel as confident in every situation because you're worried about making mistakes or you're worried about what the outcome could be. The most important thing is to stay calm. The most helpful response is calm listening, providing reassurance to that person and ensuring that the concern reaches either the parish safeguarding officer, the diocese safeguarding officer, or a statutory body that can help. The way I like to look at this is like emotional first aid. You're simply stabilizing that individual, listening to them, keeping them calm, and then passing it on to the professionals who will deal with the ongoing care in much the same way as if it was physical first aid. Because no one expects you to be perfect, but the first aid you give of stabilizing the situation and listening to that person is key. Much the same as if somebody was having difficulty with a medical condition in the street. You ask them what the problem is. You find out what the problem is, and that you then arrange the right support moving forward. So church activities often involve visiting people at home, which is an ideal opportunity to remove that isolation, break down those barriers, and provide an opportunity to really help somebody. But also remember that that isolation can create dynamics such as other people offering lifts and somebody feeling beholden to them. So it's important that we also consider dynamics such as one-to-one pastoral conversations that we have. These are all valuable ministries, but require good safeguarding awareness when we're conducting them so that we can be alive and attuned to the possibility of safeguarding concerns. And we can ensure accountability and successful outcomes follow on from that. Because we want to build a strong safeguarding culture, and that's the important thing here. There's no magic bullet, no solution that's going to suddenly appear. It's about ensuring that every opportunity is available to someone. And as Alex has already said, training is fundamentally important because if you don't, I see it like learning the rules of a game. If you don't understand the rules of a game, how are you going to successfully complete that game? So if you don't understand what you have to do in the way of safeguarding, how are you successfully going to deliver really vital, important outcomes? And a healthy safeguarding culture is built on that training, but also built on openness and clear reporting systems so that people know exactly what to do if something concerns them. If you take away nothing else, it's about report and share your concerns. Don't worry about what the label it says. Don't worry about what you think it needs to be called. It's about saying it doesn't feel right because you're all amazing people. And if you're feeling that it's not right, it isn't right. And some key messages. Safeguarding is not about blame. It's about care, dignity, and protection for the individual. And reporting a concern is not about causing trouble or being a burden. It's about supporting someone safely and ensuring that their safety is paramount in everything we do. So it wouldn't be a training session if we didn't ask a question and let you all discuss it a little bit more openly, because you've been sitting there listening to my. I'm really pleased I haven't coughed at least once. So there you go. So if you imagine that a regular church member suddenly seems to be a bit more anxious than normal and mentions money worries after somebody has begun helping them with their finances. That's all they say. So, we'll call it Steve. Steve has started helping me with my finances. What steps might you take? What might you be thinking? And who would you speak to? Let's have a little discussion around that for a couple of minutes. You can put it in the chat if it makes it easier for you, or if you raise your hand, I'm certain that Alex can tell me that you've got your hand raised.
Thank you, Dean. Yes, if you would like to comment on Dean's what would you do questions, then do unmute yourself and let's hear from you.
I didn't quite catch the last couple of things for the key messages. Got protecting dignity and that small things matter. Didn't pick up the last
It's
one or
about
two.
reporting your concern and not seeing that you're going to be a trouble. You're not troubling anybody. Safeguarding professionals are there to deliver the support. So sometimes people say, "Oh, I didn't want to appear to be causing troubles." Make sure you support that individual. I I come at this with an immense background. I would sooner have 1,000 concerns raised to me that were nothing whatsoever, than miss one single solitary thing. So, does that answer your question, your report?
You're very kind. Thanks. That's great.
Thank you very much. So we get back to the thing you tried to dodge it and move away. So what will we do? What steps might you take? What would your concerns be? And who would you be speaking to?
Barbara here. I think I'd start by chatting with them a bit further to find out a little bit more, not to investigate, but just to be clear that can you hear me okay, by the way? You can hear
I
me, yeah.
can.
Just to be clear that, is it a concern? And then if it is a concern, ask them would they like me to take it any further?
Okay. Couple of bits there. The first bit, really, really good. Really good. Clarity is key because if you ask somebody and they share that information with you, how many times have we all had it where we play email table tennis with someone and you send off something and someone comes back to you and goes, "Yeah, but what about this? Do you have this? Do you have that?" Or you might be misunderstanding when they say, "I'm worried about my financial situation." It could be that they don't have as much money as they thought they had. They've got more money than they thought they had. Nice problem to have. I wish I had it. Or it could be that they've suddenly found out that actually there's a 90-day cooling off period before they can gain access to it. So that clarity is key. The second bit, though, I would shy away from. If you believe that there is a problem, seeking their consent to share it with statutory bodies is good, but reword it in a slightly different way and say, "I feel I have to share this with my PSO, my diocese, whoever." Because going back to what I said previously about sometimes people don't want to appear to be that burden and everything else. They may say, "No, no, no, I don't want you to share that information." Are we going to be helping them if we allow that situation to continue? We're not saying disempower them. What we're saying is phrase it in a way of, "I want you to be supported and I want you to be helped, so I'm going to have to share this with somebody else." But that doesn't mean to say that it's going to be out of your control. Even in policing nowadays, they've got a phrase that they call victim-centered approach. Everything we do throughout the whole of the safeguarding landscape is we listen to what the individual wants and we shape what we do around that. So long as they're able to make sensible decisions, we support that. But we will always do so in a safe, inclusive way and make sure that the right outcomes follow and they're just shaped in the way that that individual would want. Does that make a bit more sense?
Thank you, Dean. We've had a couple of other suggestions of what they might do. Jill has said she would gently ask questions on how Steve came to help them out, i.e., how nice you have someone to help you. Who is Steve to you? I mean, that's a fair question in the family of the church. I think we can, we can be a bit up close and personal with those sorts of questions, can't we? And that might just help us actually, because it may be that we've got nothing to worry about, or it may be that there is. But as you said earlier, Dean, I'm just reminded that as much as that's a nice probing way, we're also called not to investigate. So I wonder where does the line of gentle inquiry end, and where are we actually pushing things?
Okay. Once you realise that there quite clearly is something that is a concern, you're no longer seeking clarity, you then crossed over into investigating the matter. So saying, oh, who's Steve? Steve could wind up being a financial advisor that their son-in-law has referred on to them. And if it's, oh, yes, Steve's a financial advisor, that's where you can go, oh, actually, I was wrong. And my gut feeling was slightly wrong here. And I've made many a mistake like that in my life. But so as soon as you're aware that once you cross over that, isn't there potentiality side of things, and it crosses into there quite clearly is something that I want some support and some reassurance around, then that's when it crosses over into investigation and pause at that moment in time. And the best way of saying that is, I want to make sure that you get the right outcomes and the right support. So I'm going to be referring this on to somebody who's far better than I am. And they may feel that they've got to come back to you and ask you some other details. But I don't want to overburden you or overwhelm you at this moment in time, because I don't want to ask you a load of questions that they might not actually need to have the answers to.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you, Dean. I don't know how much time you wanted to spend on this section. I'm just conscious of the time.
I haven't been keeping a clock running, so
okay. So Martin has, what I presume is quite rightly said, I would report to the next level. So, as you suggested earlier, the safeguarding lead or somebody in that kind of role. Andrew Warman, who's one of our trustees, has reminded us much of the abuse we see in older people in community and sometimes church is often caused, sadly, by a family member of someone they know. What practical steps can you recommend for it to be addressed? Reporting can be tricky.
Reporting can be tricky. What you've got to remember is you can always reframe it and go, oh, it sounds like, let's say Steve is their son-in-law, who's now actually assisting them with their finances and maybe overstepping the boundaries and using it for some financial security themselves. You turn around and say, oh, it sounds like Steve's really needs some help and support. Let me refer that on so we can get Steve some help and support, which will also help you at the same time. So it's reliving it, because then that way it's very difficult for them to say they don't want Steve to get support. So what you're doing is you're badging it up as you want to support everyone, because we do. We don't want anybody to be in a situation where they can inadvertently place themselves in it. And I've dealt with lots of people throughout my professional career where people have involved in various areas of abuse towards individuals, and it never starts off as a negative thing. Sometimes it can be emotional frustration that presents itself in a physical manifestation, or it can be various other formats. So the best way of doing that is to, as I said, just rebrand it slightly. I think that really like to get Steve some help here, because it will work better around that side of things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dean. Lucille, you've raised your hand. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah. If you decide to report something, do you have to ask the person's permission or tell them? Would you say, I feel I'd like to refer this to somebody, or can I just go straight to my safeguarding officer and say, I'm a bit concerned about this chap, Steve, who's helping Tommy or whatever he's called?
Okay. We always recommend to people that they don't say, I would like to, because you're then seeking permission to forward it on. Reword it slightly and just say, I'm going to have to share this with, yeah. They will then make a decision as to what they do. If there's certain thresholds under the Care Act and various other pieces of legislation that means that under some circumstances we don't have to have consent to share information with statutory bodies. We don't like triggering those without consent, even if we do have the ability to do so, because, as I said, we like to shape it and form it around the needs and welfare of the individual. It would be perverse if we simply changed one form of abuse to statutory abuse because we're then taking control of the situation and almost treating them like a child and saying, no, we know best, we're going to do X, Y, Z. So we would always say, look, we want to help with the situation. So I'm going to have to get somebody who knows a lot more than I do and tell them, and they will then talk to you. I will always speak to the individual themselves before making any decision around referring a matter on to a statutory organisation, unless it would create a more dangerous situation to do so. So if it was controlling coercive relationship that I feared may become more domestic abuse, physicality related, then I would probably not seek consent under those circumstances. Because the circumstances can be quite tragic. But if it's something around financial abuse, etc., we'll work collaboratively with them because ultimately that's what we want to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean. I'm going to invite Janet in a minute, but I just wanted to ask if you finished your talk, are we moving into the Q&A section, I guess is what I'm asking.
Oh, I've got 2 more slides.
Right, share those slides, and then I'm going to open up the Q&A, and I'm going to start with Janet.
Problem. This is just the escalation thing that we covered off quite naturally, and that's why I had that. And then we come on to the thing that you've got to remember is always pass that concern on. Do not attempt to shoulder it yourself, because if the worst happened, you would never forgive yourself. And you're wonderful people, and I want to take that burden away from you and allow some twisted old individual like myself shoulder that burden for you, because I'm more professionally competent at being able to do that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're working together on that side of things. And then we come on to questions. So that's that.
Wonderful. Thank you ever so much, Dean. It's been really good to have a reminder from you about what safeguarding is all about. And I love the sort of core layer that you've put over everything. And I think the way you worded it is that our approach should be balanced, respectful, and focused on the individual's personal need. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, whether we are dealing with large scale safeguarding issues or whether we're just trying to tweak how we actually apply some of our policies in our seniors groups, in our pastoral visits, and so on. I'd love to hear some questions or perhaps some solutions from people about, have you done great safeguarding when it comes to your hymns we love sessions, or your luncheon clubs, or your pastoral visits? I wonder if I could invite friends Tim and Jean to unmute themselves. You've recently shared a few really good, just practical thoughts about things that you do when it comes to your good practical safeguarding of the older people in your ministries. Tim and Jean, welcome. I wonder if you'd just like to share a few of your top ones that you think would be good for our church champions here to hear about.
The one thing that I've got in mind is that be aware of your church safeguarding policy. We're very fortunate. We've got a very robust policy. And when this was coming up, I thought, well, I'll just have a look at it again. And there were certain things that I could see for dealing with our older friends, that perhaps minor things, but which weren't perhaps happening. One particular one, Jill, what's her name? Safeguarding lead is actually on this call, so she'll probably realise what happens. We have open prayer. And one of the sections in the policy, it says to ensure that everybody can hear when open prayer takes place. And that unfortunately isn't always happening. So we're on the case on this one, Jill. We shall make sure that it does happen in future. Yeah, you have.
Yeah, one of the things that I come from a children's safeguarding background because I was a children's social worker for 10 years, and whenever I do a visit, I always make notes. Now, before I make notes, I always inform the person that while I'm visiting, I just make notes because my memory isn't always great. So if I'm coming again, I can rate it, then say to people, last time you mentioned about this topic. So, but it's just helpful to keep those notes, but to make sure the person knows that you're doing them and to say that you can read them. And I always date them and sign them. So this is all my background from children's work, but it's important because it's sometimes you look back and you actually see a trend, and it's those trends which help, like your example with that older gentleman and Steve coming in to help. Was this particular behaviour from the older gentleman something that had been gradual, or was it something that was completely out of context? So I think sometimes it's just worth making a few notes and saying, yeah, I've got that, so that I can ask the person, well, you were going away on holiday, weren't you? Tell me all about it. And then they think, here, somebody's listening.
That's wonderful. And one of the things that you've reminded me of earlier on was that sometimes our safeguarding policies and our health and safety policies can kind of merge when it comes to ministry among older people. Tell us about your falls policy and why that came about. I thought that was so good.
Yeah. Yes, we do have a falls policy. If someone falls and they're not able to get up, like leaning on a chair or something like that, then they have to stay where they are, and we call the paramedic or the ambulance in. The reason was because a dear friend of ours last year, she fell over in the street, and people very kindly came over and helped her. And somebody came out and gave her a blanket and that, but two people came over and lifted her up to lean against a wall. And what happened was that she had badly broken her hip. So she was in excruciating pain and had several weeks in hospital, didn't she, for operation and that. So we just don't touch. We just, if they can't get up themselves, with aid, obviously, the chair or stool or something. Yeah.
And the other side of that is, we don't know why that person fell in the first place. It might be through medication. We don't have their medical history, and we don't need to know that. But it's just we have to be careful that we're not exacerbating the injury that might have happened.
Yeah. So you would call an ambulance?
Yes. Yeah, straight away.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing those couple of bits. I'm going to come on to some questions. It's amazing, isn't it, how time just flies in these sessions every single time. Let me just have a look and see. Should church pastoral carers visit in pairs? Just thinking about the carers' protection. I think that's a good question.
Yes. It's statutory policy across almost every landscape, and it's actually directed by the Charities Commission that you should attend in pairs. It's as protective for the individuals attending as it is for the person being visited, because sometimes, especially if somebody does have cognitive issues, they may misunderstand what's happening. And so it's to support and love and show caring for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Dean. Someone has asked, not sure if it's relevant, but should seniors leaders in churches have DBS checks? We go into a local independent living facility, but do not go into individual homes. Do you think they should be DBS checked?
Okay, there's legal requirements and then there's best practice. Best practice is that everybody that conducts any form of activity with vulnerable individuals should have DBS checks. And so long as you explain why you're wanting to have that, it gets through the necessary checks and balances.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dean. Someone's asked, and I guess this, we're not expecting you to go through a whole policy here, but maybe you could direct us to where people might start. But somebody has asked, they said we're hoping to find out how to write a safeguarding policy for older people and for those living with dementia. Now, I think sometimes we can assume that everyone is part of a church that's part of a diocese or part of a Baptist association where all of this is already in place. But of course, with the wonderful flourishing of so many independent churches, that's not always a thing. And we might have a few seniors workers out there who actually don't have a safeguarding policy to adhere to. Where could they start to get some information to write a good one?
There's some really good third sector charities out there anyway, people like the Alzheimer's Society, etc., that are really good. But what I can do is I can share with you a few hyperlinks for those that you can send out when you send out the YouTube link and everything else. So as opposed to bombarding you with loads of hyperlinks that people start trying to write down, if you're anything like me, you always get it wrong. I'll share those with you outside of this. But the thing that I'd say to you is don't expect for perfection. So long as you're doing something in addition to what you're doing now, it's a step in the right direction. Much the same as the first 4T motor car that came off of the conveyor belt wasn't up to the standards that modern day cars are. You can always improve it and make it better. So don't worry about it needing to be perfect. But I can share with you some really great links around that.
Thank you, Dean. And I think one of the ones that we often come across is a charity called 318. So if you can't wait for the links, you can go and have a look at their website, 318. But yes, we'd be delighted to share that. This charity 318, they do training, they do DBS checks, they help you write policies. So it's a good place to begin to have a little look at. Dean, somebody has asked, can people have a copy of your PowerPoint? Is that something you're happy to send to Rachel for us to share? Excellent. Yeah. I'm really conscious that we are quickly running out of time. So I just want to ask you, Dean, would you please pray for everybody before I go on to a few notices? It's been really good. Lots of things for people to chew over as they go on into their afternoons. Thank you. Let's pray.
Loving God, thank you for the time we've shared today. Thank you for the commitment shown to safeguarding and care by all those on this call, helping us carry what we have learned into everyday practice, to notice, to listen, and to act when needed, always guided by compassion, wisdom, courage, and love for the individual. May our churches be places of safety, dignity, and respect for all, especially for those who may be more vulnerable. Go with us now in our service and ministry and help us care for one another well. Amen.
Amen. Dean, thank you so much for everything you've brought to us this afternoon. It's been